Maria's dad did, it put smiles on all of our faces.
Those are the words of Lynette Dixon, a mother, a woman who buried her 16-year-old son less than a year ago, a woman who sat in a hospital for 4 days praying her child would survive and watched him die anyway, a woman who then spent months watching the man accused of killing her son walk free, eating, sleeping, living, while she learned how to exist inside grief that has no bottom. And the moment that finally made her smile? This brawl video. That is a father beating the man accused of murdering his son in a courthouse hallway in broad daylight. And a mother who had not genuinely smiled in months watched that video and felt something she had not felt since the day her son died. Relief. That one detail tells you everything you need to know about how badly a system failed a family before a single punch was ever thrown. It was a Friday evening, the 23rd of May, 2025, North Charlotte, Stroud Park Court. The kind of early evening where people are outside, kids are moving through the neighborhood, and the weekend is just getting started. At approximately 5:30 in the afternoon, a man pulled out a handgun, pointed it at several people, and opened fire. 3 people were shot. 2 were rushed to Atrium Health in critical condition. A third arrived at the hospital separately, treated for a gunshot wound to the ankle. Among the critically wounded, a 16-year-old boy named Lynette Dixon. Lynette is the son of a Charlotte man named Shaheem Snipe, a father who, in those first desperate hours at the hospital, had no idea that his son would not be coming home. The Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department responded immediately. Detectives canvassed the area, witnesses were interviewed, and surveillance cameras in the neighborhood had captured what happened. What that footage showed, according to investigators, was a man pulling a gun, pointing it at multiple people, and firing. For 4 days, Lynette Dixon fought for his life at Atrium Health. His family held vigil. His father sat in that hospital waiting, hoping, praying. On Tuesday, the 27th of May, 2025, Lynette Dixon was pronounced dead. He was 16 years old. Losing a child is not something language can fully reach. There is no paragraph adequate enough. There is no sentence that captures what it means to send a son out into the world and have him not come back. Shaheem Snipe knows that now, in a way no parent should ever have to. When Lynette died, the homicide investigation immediately escalated. Detectives had already been building their case, and 1 day later, on Wednesday, May 28th, they made an arrest. Mugshot: Marion McKnight. Lower third: Marion McKnight, 20. Arrested the 28th of May, 2025. Marion McKnight, 20 years old, was taken into custody at the Mecklenburg County Law Enforcement Center. The charges filed against him were severe. First-degree murder for the death of Lynette Dixon. 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder for the surviving victims. This was not a minor charge. This was not a gray area. This was a first-degree murder charge on a 16-year-old boy in Charlotte, North Carolina. But this story was far from over, because while Lynette Dixon's family buried their son and began the impossible process of rebuilding their lives, 2 other families were left to deal with their own wounds. 2 people survived the Stroud Park Court shooting. One was struck in the ankle. The other was not so fortunate. The second critically wounded victim was left paralyzed from the waist down. Think about what that means for a moment. He didn't die in that shooting, but the life he knew, the ability to walk, to move freely, to exist in the world the way he had before, that was taken from him too.
He lost his life 2 times. They brought him back.
She is talking about the moments in that hospital when her son's heart stopped, when doctors fought to keep him in this world, when she stood in a waiting room not knowing if the child she raised was going to make it through the night. He survived. But the road ahead was and still is extraordinarily difficult.
I thank God he spared my son's life, but our life is just...
Physical therapy, occupational therapy, nursing care rotating through the home. A young man who was once mobile, now fighting to reclaim basic function, learning how to live in a body that no longer responds the way it used to. This is what the Stroud Park Court shooting produced. A dead 16-year-old, a paralyzed survivor, and another young man recovering from a bullet wound to the ankle. 3 victims, 3 families, 3 sets of grief, all pointed at the same accused man. Marion McKnight, who, by the fall of 2025, would be walking free. Here is where this story pivots. Here is where it stops being simply a story about a shooting and becomes a story about a system. Marion McKnight sat in custody after his arrest in May 2025. He faced a first-degree murder charge. He faced 3 counts of attempted murder. Prosecutors argued he should remain behind bars as the case moved forward. And then, a judge disagreed. In November 2025, Superior Court Judge Daniel Cunard granted Marion McKnight a bond of $100,000 secured, meaning McKnight did not have to post the full amount. He posted a fraction of it, and he walked out. The conditions attached to that bond were significant: electronic monitoring, an ankle bracelet, house arrest at his mother's residence, travel restrictions, he could not leave a designated area, and social media restrictions, he was explicitly ordered not to post on social media platforms. Prosecutors had stood in that courtroom and opposed the bond. They argued directly that a man charged with shooting and killing a teenager and shooting 2 others should not be released into the community while awaiting trial. The judge weighed the defense's argument. McKnight's attorney, Michael Kabakoff, presented a self-defense theory, arguing that video evidence and independent witness accounts supported the idea that McKnight felt threatened before he pulled that trigger. The judge reviewed the material and, applying the legal standards before him, granted the bond. McKnight went home. Now let's be precise here, because precision matters. Judges make bond decisions based on legal frameworks, not emotion. A bond hearing is not a conviction hearing. Under the law, Marion McKnight is presumed innocent until proven guilty. His attorney believes in his self-defense argument. Those legal realities exist, whether we are comfortable with them or not. But here is the other reality, the one that exists alongside that legal one. Shaheem Snipe knew that the man accused of shooting his son dead was sleeping in a house somewhere in Charlotte, wearing an ankle bracelet, while Jamarie's grave was still fresh. Lynette Dixon, Jamarie's mother, knew it too. And they were not alone. Because this situation, a Charlotte murder suspect receiving bond over the objection of prosecutors, was not new. It was not an isolated decision. In September 2025, a grandmother from a completely separate Charlotte murder case stood before cameras pushing for bond reform in Mecklenburg County, saying publicly that action needed to be taken. A 2020 murder case in Charlotte had produced the same family outrage just months earlier. In the fall of that year, suspects out on bond, while victims' families demanded to know why. This is a pattern, not a glitch, a pattern, and the collision course this story was always heading toward was already set. Fast forward to February 2026. Prosecutors filed a motion to revoke Marion McKnight's bond. The allegation he had violated the conditions of his release, not once, but in multiple ways. He violated his travel restrictions, he went places he was not permitted to go, and he violated his social media restrictions, posting content online when he had been explicitly ordered by a court not to. Let that second one sit for a moment. This man, charged with first-degree murder, with 3 attempted murders, with shooting a 16-year-old boy who died 4 days later, was posting on social media while on bond. The families of his victims have eyes. They use the internet. They see what he posts. Whatever those posts contained in that question has not been fully answered in public reporting. The family saw them. Think about what it does to a grieving mother to open her phone and see that. Think about what it does to a father. When a judge grants bond and attaches conditions, those conditions are not suggestions. They are court orders. Violating them is not a technical infraction. It is a direct defiance of the court's authority. And when the system allows that defiance to go unaddressed for months before scheduling a hearing, it sends a message to victims' families about exactly where they rank in its list of priorities. A bond revocation hearing was scheduled for the 19th of February 2026 at Mecklenburg County Courthouse. Shaheem Snipe was going to be there. Marion McKnight was going to be there. Whatever was going to happen on the 5th floor of that building. Lower 3rd, Mecklenburg County Courthouse, the 19th of February, 2026. Video. Courthouse brawl footage full. Watch this video carefully. The man moving toward Marion McKnight with absolute purpose, that is Shaheem Snipe, 47 years old, Jamarie's father. He does not hesitate. He does not warn anyone. He does not appear to be thinking about consequences. He launches himself at McKnight with everything he has, punches, kicks, all of it directed at the man he believes took his son from him. Law enforcement responds quickly. Officers deploy a taser. Snipe goes down. McKnight is injured and transported to the hospital. Snipe is arrested on the spot, charged with misdemeanor assault, inflicting serious injury. He is released later on a $1,000 bond. The bond revocation hearing for Marion McKnight? Postponed. Rescheduled for a later date. In the span of roughly 5 minutes, this story exploded beyond Charlotte's city limits. The video spread across social media before the day was over. By the weekend, New York Post, People Magazine, Yahoo News, NDTV, US Magazine, outlets that do not typically spend much time covering Mecklenburg County court proceedings. And the public reaction across platforms, across political lines, across demographics was overwhelming in its support for Shaheem Snipe. After the video spread, the voices came from every direction. And to tell this story honestly, you have to hear all of them. The first voice, the one that matters most, belongs to Lynette Dixon, Jamarie's mother.
It put smiles on all of our faces.
She is not describing satisfaction at violence. She is describing what it feels like to have been failed by a system for months, to have watched the man accused of killing your child walk free, violate his conditions, post on social media, and then, for one brief moment, watch accountability arrive in the only form it had appeared in since May 2025. That smile is not the smile of a woman celebrating a beating. That smile is the smile of a woman who had been told repeatedly and in countless institutional ways that her son's death mattered less than due process, and finally saw something happen that felt, even for a moment, like it mattered. That is the indictment at the center of this story, and it came from a mother. The second voice belongs to Susan Sherrill. She is Jamarie's aunt, and she did not mince words. Any father would have did the same thing. We're still grieving. This is a wound that will never ever close because my nephew is 16 years old and he should still be here with us. A wound that will never close. She said it plainly. There is no legal proceeding that changes the fact that Jamarie Dixon is gone. No bond hearing, no conviction, no sentence. He is 16 years old and he is buried. And the people who loved him are left to carry that every single day, while the machinery of the justice system moves at its own deliberate pace, on its own timeline, with its own set of priorities. Then there is the mother of the paralyzed survivor. Her son, still in rehabilitation, still fighting for function that most people take for granted every morning they get out of bed. She wants Marion McKnight behind bars. Not because she is consumed by revenge, but because every day he is free is another day the wound stays open. Another day her son goes to physical therapy with no resolution in sight. Another day she cries at night and wonders when any of this will make any kind of sense.
By grace of God, we're moving in the right direction.
Her son is healing, slowly, painfully, but moving in the right direction. That sentence, 4 words, is doing the work of 1,000. It is the sentence of a woman who has recalibrated what hope looks like, who no longer measures progress in milestones, who measures it in movement, in small motions, in the fact that her child, who was clinically gone twice on an operating table, is still here. That is what survival looks like when a shooting tears through a community. It is not dramatic, it is not viral. It is a mother counting tiny movements as miracles because months ago there were no movements at all. Then there is Michael Kabikoff, Marion McKnight's attorney, a man with 22 years of legal experience in Charlotte courts, a man who has a legal and ethical obligation to defend his client and who, like it or not, is doing exactly that. His statement after the courthouse attack was direct. This was the most violent assault I've seen in a courthouse in my 22 years as a lawyer. Any parent can sympathize with the intense grief of losing a child, but the violence we saw in court on Thursday was unacceptable. He is not wrong about the facts. A man was beaten inside a courthouse. That is, by every legal and institutional standard, unacceptable. Kabikoff also continued to maintain his client's position, arguing that the shooting on Stroud Park Court was an act of self-defense, that Marion McKnight feared for his life before he fired. That video and independent witness testimony support that narrative. That argument will be tested at trial. That is exactly where it belongs. But for the families of everyone shot on Stroud Park Court that Friday evening, waiting for that trial, while McKnight posts on social media and violates court orders, has been its own form of daily punishment. The nonprofit organization MARCUS, which advocates for victims' families in Charlotte, issued a statement after the courthouse attack that put everything in its proper frame. They described what happened as the culmination of a grieving father's anguish following an unfathomable loss and a judicial system that has consistently failed to safeguard his family. Consistently failed to safeguard his family. That phrase is doing real work. It is not an accusation against any one judge or any one defense attorney. It is an accusation against a system, one that, in the eyes of these families and the advocates standing beside them, prioritized process over protection at every critical turn. The bond was granted, the conditions were violated, the hearing was delayed, and a father who had been told at every step that the system had it handled finally decided it did not. Here is what this story is actually about, and it is not the brawl video. The brawl video is a symptom. The story is this: why was Marion McKnight on bond? A 20-year-old man charged with first-degree murder and 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder was granted a secured bond over the explicit objection of prosecutors. He then violated the conditions of that bond, travel restrictions and social media restrictions both, and the response was to schedule a hearing several months later. Now, let's be fair one final time, because fairness is not optional in a story this emotionally loaded. Judges apply legal standards. They weigh flight risk. They weigh community ties. They weigh the constitutional presumption of innocence. They are not indifferent to victims when they grant bond. They are applying a framework that exists to prevent the jailing of people who have not yet been convicted of anything. And McKnight's self-defense argument introduced enough legal uncertainty for a judge to make the decision he made. That is the system functioning as designed. But here's the question that design cannot answer. If the system is going to release a murder suspect on bond, it must enforce the conditions attached to that bond with absolute, immediate, zero-tolerance rigor. Because the moment those conditions are violated without swift consequence, the system loses all credibility with the families it is supposed to protect. McKnight violated his travel restrictions. He violated his social media restrictions. A revocation hearing was scheduled months later. The families watched all of it happen. Shaheem Snipe was in that courthouse hallway on February 19th. Now you know why. And this is not isolated to this case. That is the part of this story most coverage has missed entirely. In September 2025, months before this incident, a grandmother from a completely separate Charlotte murder case was standing before cameras demanding bond reform in Mecklenburg County, saying that action needed to be taken, that the system was repeatedly releasing violent offenders on bond over the objections of prosecutors and the pleas of victims' families. Nobody listened loudly enough. And on the 19th of February 2026, Shaheem Snipe became the loudest voice in the room. Let's talk about Lynette Dixon. Because we have spent the majority of this story on systems and hearings and legal frameworks and video footage, and he deserves more than that. He was 16 years old when he was shot on a Friday evening in North Charlotte. He spent 4 days in a hospital before his body gave out. He never got to finish growing up. He never found out who he was going to become. He never got the rest of his life. His father has now been arrested for going after the man accused of taking him. His mother smiled for the first time in months watching it happen. His aunt said the wound will never close. And another family connected to that same terrible evening is grinding through rehabilitation, one session at a time, counting small movements as victories. This is what gun violence actually looks like when the cameras go home. It is not a viral moment. It is a mother crying every night. It is a young man relearning how to move his body. It is a father sitting in a hospital and then sitting in a courthouse and then sitting in handcuffs because the system he was told to trust kept letting him down. Lynette Dixon deserved more than a viral video. He deserved a system that took his case seriously from the moment Marion McKnight was arrested. He deserved for the people who loved him to be able to grieve without feeling like the institution built to deliver justice was working against them at every turn. Whether he gets that posthumously, imperfectly, through a trial that has not yet been scheduled, that question is still open. As of the 25th of February, 2026, here is where things stand. Shaheem Snipe faces a misdemeanor assault charge. He was released on a $1,000 bond the same day he was arrested. His court date is ahead of him. Marion McKnight was treated at a hospital after the February 19th attack. His bond revocation hearing has been rescheduled. He still faces a first-degree murder charge, 3 attempted murder charges, and a self-defense legal strategy that will be argued in a courtroom on a date not yet set. The paralyzed survivor is still in rehabilitation, still in physical therapy, still counting movements. His mother is still filling her days with appointments and her nights with tears. Lynette Dixon, Jamarie's mother, smiled once, and the trial has not begun. There is a version of this story that is easy to tell. A grieving father snaps, and you either cheer for him or condemn him, and you scroll to the next thing. That version has already been told 1,000 times in 1,000 comment sections. This is not that version. This is the version where we ask what has to go wrong and how many times before a father runs out of faith in a system and decides to handle it himself in a courthouse hallway. This is the version where we look at Lynette Dixon's smile and sit with the discomfort of understanding exactly why it happened. This is the version where a paralyzed young man doing physical therapy is not a footnote to the brawl video. He is the reason the brawl video exists. Shaheem Snipe threw those punches because he felt he had been left with no other option. That is not a justification. It is a diagnosis. And until Mecklenburg County, until this country is honest about what is broken in the space between a murder charge and a secured bond and a violated court order and a postponed hearing, the next grieving father in the next courthouse hallway in the next American city is already waiting. If you or someone you know has been affected by gun violence in Charlotte or anywhere in the United States, contact your local victim services organization or the National Center for Victims of Crime at 1-8554-VICTIM. This case is ongoing. Updates will be published as the trial date is set and proceedings begin.